So the referee Khalid Sharif, who is he? The Prophet ﷺ says that أَنَّ الْأَرْضُ زُورًا وَظُلْمًا. The earth will be filled with oppression and tyranny. Once it reaches the peak, Allah, the person, the rajul minni, every hadith is authentic, inshallah. The Prophet ﷺ talks of his lineage. He says, rajul minni means what? What does it mean? A descendant, which means Ahlul Bayt. So he will have to be someone from Ahlul Bayt. Fantastic. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, one of the problems. So specifically from the grand grandchildren of who? Fatima radiallahu anha. Okay, fantastic. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his name is like my name, Muhammad. Not just that, he said his father's name is Abdullah. His name is Muhammad Abdullah. Fantastic. Then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says his nickname is Al-Mahdi. Someone else gave that name, who gave it? The Prophet ﷺ gave him that title, so that's not his name. That's the title, Al-Mahdi, the guy did one. Then the Prophet ﷺ, his name is forehead. Yes. He says, Ajl al-Jabha. His forehead is high, which is clear. So that means what? The hair is receding a little bit. The hair is not bald, but the hair is not receding a little bit. Not just the forehead, he explained, the nose. He says, his nose is prominent, so it's clear. And he says it's pointing, and from the middle there's a bend. Allahu Akbar. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay, what else? When will he show up? Will we notice him? There's something interesting about that question. Will we see him going and like, Muhammad Abdullah, Ahlul Bayt, you're the one? No, actually, no one will very much notice him until one night. Yusrih Allah layla. Literally, overnight, everything changes for him. There we go. So he might be a regular guy in school, we got a B minus, Allah knows that. Okay? Living life, overnight, Yusrih Allah layla. Allah changes his heart, Allah changes his sounds, Allah upgrades his faith, Allah. But what do we know? Inna amrahu, Allah says in the Quran. Allah says, Allah's command is an arada shay'a. Allah wants something to happen. What did he say? Say it in Arabic. Kun fayakun. Be and it becomes. So it's not hard on Allah for something to change overnight. Fair enough? Allah fi layla. Now, what happens? This man, so far, can be imitated. Like someone can come up and say, you know what? My name is Muhammad. Abdullah, my guy. And I'm from Ahlul Bayt. And what else? Look at my nose. Yeah. Look at my forehead. And this is strange. There are people that claim to be a little. There's a guy that keeps the ice cream. Oh, it's just good. This guy is so disturbing. Right? I remember one time, that's when my friend is there. This guy comes and keeps talking to people, saying, oh, good. Okay, stop. You're not listening. All right? So then he said, no, I am whatever. So then, alhamdulillah, I ignored him everything. And then I saw him another day, speaking to a group of youth. So I went, and told these youth, now I no longer talk to people, inshallah, but I told them, don't listen to this man. Okay, if you know this that line, remember my friend Ellie said, bro, I never saw this angry with me. Because such batil, okay, that is being done, you have to go to it. Like, you know what, inshallah, they will figure it out. The thing that strikes the heart, may Allah protect it. So there's a lot of things that happen. So this wonderful man, what happens after this? This matter of a Mahdi is not gradual. Like, it's not like, you know, no, it becomes viral. It will break the internet. Overnight, things will know. It's a trend. Allah. And then Allah will guide. Focus it. Allah will guide a few people around him to support him. Knowing you're the one. Clearly, you're the one. So they encourage him. What do we learn from this? He does not confuse him. People of corrupted influence and corrupted leaders among the Muslims. Corrupted Muslims, the wrong leaders, but basically Muslims will come together and they form an army to kill who? This is very simple. They kill a Mahdi. Muslim army, a Muslim army assembles to go and kill al-Mahdi. Now, when this happens, the 30 schools are going to kill him. What does Mahdi and the believers do? They went to Al-Kaaba. When they went to Al-Kaaba, this is a worldly known law. If you go to the Kaaba, it's a sacred land. Don't kill him. Even if the one that you saw next to the Kaaba is going to murder your own father, you don't kill someone around the Kaaba, it's a sacred land. And look what Allah he says, عبث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في منامه. One night the Prophet was crossing the street, right? Like he's anxious, he cannot sleep, he's crossing, like he's having a hard time getting out of sleep. So then he said, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, you have done something in your sleep, لم تكن تفعله, I've never stopped falling like that. You stop your sleeping, moving around, the Prophet tells him, Al-Ajab. Al-Ajab, strange, it's bizarre. إن الناس من أمتي, a group of people from my ummah, and Muslims from my ummah, يؤمنون بالبيت برجل. They go to the bait. What's bait means? The Kaaba. They go to the Kaaba. Okay? Meantime, the men from the Quraysh and the bait. And the bait, he sought shelter in that house. Okay? But an army comes to go and kill him. He's so distressed. Somebody in my ummah would attack the Kaaba to kill him. And now, everything so far can be imitated. So it's said, the biggest sign, if this happens, 100%, and Allah knows best, this is enough. The Prophet says, فَإِذَا كَانُوا لِبَيْدَاءَ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ, as the army is heading towards the Mahdi, practice the earth, is swallowed. Earth literally opens up and swallows the middle of the army. Yes, looks up to be outside. The army is this big, the middle, all is swallows down to earth. When you have the one who's at the beginning, called the one who's at the end, they're surviving, right? You see what is happening? This is unbelievable. Earth opened up while they're doing this. What happened? Earth opens up at the front and the back, and the entire army is swallowed. Then the Prophet says, very few people, maybe one or two people, very few people, they are surviving. Why? That will be the one that tells the world the army has been swallowed by earth. At that point, everybody on earth will know this is al-Mahdi. So now, people come and they travel to Mecca to give the bay'ah, the pledge of allegiance. You're the leader, you're the one, we know about you, all the signs of the check, you're the one. What they do, the Prophet tells you when that bay'ah, that pledge, when will you sign the contract with the Khalifa? Now, then the Rukni what? Which is what? Between the black stone, the Kaaba, and the stone of Ibrahim, Muhammad Ibrahim, between that, that's where the pledge will be taking place. Bismillah, they assemble an army. Remember, so now he wants to come, as the Prophet told us, to fill earth with goodness, the way earth was filled with wickedness. That's what the Prophet said. So he says, as many Muslims come around the world, and many people, many people convert to Islam. Hundreds, tens of thousands. There's one that lives in 50,000 or something. So then the Prophet said, the purpose of battles is the Arabian Peninsula. Allahu Akbar. It seems that the time of the Mahdi, the Arabian Peninsula needs some cleanup. And he starts with the Arabian Peninsula. Without mentioning any names or none of the flying here or there, but that's what he does with all the information, and he's doing the best not to hide any information or really two seconds of them and this and this. يعني نرجع out the Arabian Peninsula, nice cleanup. Clean up, the Prophet says Allah makes him conquerors. So Mahdi now is the Khalifa of all of Arabia. Now, as he is winning, what happens to the army? Getting bigger, right? Then they go to the Persian area. Persian area, which is known as today in Iran or the surrounding countries, just to give you the location possible. I'm not saying that's exactly the situation of Iraq. Maybe that's what we all know. Persia, they go and they fight battles. They go to the war. Sit here, Allahu Akbar. And the Khilafah, the Muslim leadership is going all the way. Then they go to face the Roman Empire. The ulama, when they talk about the Roman Empire, in Arabic it's also known as Bani al-Asfar. Bani al-Asfar is another way of calling it. They say what's known today, Europe and North America. They are typically the Romans, Europe and North America. Now, when the Prophet said something interesting. Now, this hadith, we're not sure exactly is it around that time, like Arabian Persia, and is exactly happened or something before. What is it? In one authentic hadith, he says there are 6 signs. If they happen, you will never see it. The last sign he gave, the first 5 by the way, the first 5 he said, one of them is my death. That was the first thing. Allah passed away. Another one is a virus that spreads, that many people die in the biggest of numbers. And it happens. Amwas, plague, and a lot of them. The one is this last one. What truth is it? There will be a peace treaty between you, between you and the Muslims, between the Muslims and Bani al-Asfar, the Romans. There will be a peace treaty, so no more. So the ulama, when they talk about this part, they say, today there's a peace treaty. There's no war between the Muslims and the Roman Empire in Europe. We find that let's proceed. Then he said, the Romans will become treacherous, will show a very ugly side to the Muslims. Then they come and attack the Muslims. SubhanAllah, they don't are treacherous. They're treacherous and they assemble an army to fight. Look at the detail. They come with 80 different groups. 8 different groups. Each group has 12,000 soldiers. What's the number? 960,000 people. About 1 million soldiers. Okay, the Roman army are going to assemble and fight the Muslims. Where do they go? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says the Roman army will come to an area known as ادعم. What does that mean? And it is in today's time in Syria. As for the Muslim army, their assembly, where will it start from? Medina. That's what the Prophet says. ويخرج إليهم جيش من المدينة. Ready for that line? من خيار أهل الأرض يومئذ. It will be the best of human beings on earth. Much of the army, a significant amount, with the best human beings ever. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, when they're about to meet the Roman Empire or the army, and the Muslims are not small anymore, they're not close to that. There's one thing the enemy wants from the Muslims. They said, "Sallu baynana." We don't want to fight you back. What do you want? I don't want you. We want الذين سبقوا منا للحقيقة. We want the converts. The thing that hurts them the most are the ones that were with them and accepted Islam. What does Allah and the believers say? La wallah. Wallahi, we will not make you touch them. We will not just step aside and make you fight them. بينكم وبين إخواننا, they are brothers. They became Muslim yesterday. That's what Islam does. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, right when the battle is about to start, bad news. What's the bad news? The Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Biddatun shadida. First, in Jaysh al-Islami, yabtad. 1/3 of the Muslim army apostate. What? 1/3? This is too much. And they run away. The Prophet says, لا يتوب الله عليهم أبدا. That 1/3, Allah will never give them tawfiq. Allah will never help them in asking for Allah's forgiveness. So then, upon seeing that, the Muslims will prepare a set of soldiers. The numbers are really small, they're a lot smaller. So they come with a group and they fight a fight. يحدد بينهم الليل. They fight مصطبع لليل. They all the way till the night. فيطير هؤلاء وهؤلاء. Then at the end of the first day of war, they one team goes back to their camp, the other team go back. No one is the victorious person. Now what happened? What the shaitan? Majority of the Muslim group that went to fight that day, the majority. So then now the Muslims are dying in a huge amount of numbers. Now day one, day two, they come to a group, let's go fight. They give bay'ah, we fight till death. This is it. Khalas, shahadatun al-nasr. There's no other option. They fight from day till the night. Then they all go back to their camps. The majority of the Muslims are dead at that second day. Then the third day, the Muslims are running out of soldiers. And alive so far, fighting as hard as he can. Third day, they fight again. They make an oath. We fight till death or victory. They go until the day ends, and the majority of the Muslims what? Die once again. So the Prophet says, إذا كان يوم الرابع, the fourth day of war, what happens? نهب إليهم بقية أهل الإسلام. Muslims that they never came to Mecca for bay'ah, Muslims that were around and not part of the battle, they now book their flights, they get their cars, their horses, or whatever the case is they want, and they all say enough is enough, and they now join. Then what happened? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, فَيَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ الدَّبْرَةَ عَلَيْهِمْ. Then Allah will make the Roman army so terrified of the Muslims joining. فَيَقْتَتِلُونَ مَقْتَلًا. Because they will fight a fight, which is famously known as al-Malham al-Kubra, some reference to this one, the greatest of battles, the grandest of battles ever. The Prophet says, لَمْ يُرَى مِثْلُهَا. Never did earth experience a fight, a battle. Jihad, the way this battle is between the Muslims and these Romans. To what extent, Ya Rasulullah? He says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, حتى الطائر, even if a bird would just fly, just flying over that battlefield, it will not make it to the other end. The bird will not make it to the other end for us to hear that battle is. And with Allah's help, the Muslims become victorious. Allah grant the victory. And they also conquered Constantinople and Constantinople. And this is one of the grandest battles ever, if not the most severe. And the Muslims are so happy, they're so rejoiced, but they're so sad as well. What? How much spoils of war? How many armors? How many weapons? How many this? How many that? All these things. So the Prophet ﷺ said, as much spoils of war that are there, what joy is in that? Why is that, Ya Rasulullah? He says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the amount of death the Muslims face to gain that victory, it gives the number. 100 family members that were in that battle, only one family member survives. Only one family member makes it. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, between them being so sad for the loss of family, and between them collecting the spoils of war, أفضل الشهداء عند الله, those who died are the best mujahideen martyrs ever. لا يفتنون أبدا, and those who survive, they will never lose from Allah. They will never fail a trial from Allah. While they are distributing the spoils of war, an announcer announces. An announcer makes an announcement. What is it? Bad news. What's the matter? This was making an announcement. Either Allah is talking of Shaitan or something severe. What is happening to us? And the DAJJAL has come up. So right when that announcement was made, and Mahdi and some of the soldiers and the Prophet tells the details. He says they let go of everything they had, the spoils of war, the armor, the sword, whatever the case is. They let it go. They sent 10 horsemen. The Prophet says, I know the name of all 10 people on the horses. And I know the names of their parents. And I know the color of their horses. They are the greatest horsemen ever on earth. They go to see, is it Dajjal? Is it true? Is it not true? Before I tell you exactly what happened, let's go back in time. We'll do that. Let's go back in time to the time of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet ﷺ, he was talking about Dajjal, he said one of the most interesting statements ever. He says, أيها الناس, or people, there is never a trial, a test that will test your faith, test yourself, stronger than the test of Dajjal. Then he says, never did a prophet come, Adam, Nuh, Idris, Zechariah, Jesus, Musa, all, except that they gave lectures about Dajjal to their people. Allahu Akbar. That's how serious Dajjal is. Then the Prophet says, I am Akhir al-Anbiya, I'm the last prophet. And you are the last nation, So he is for sure coming in this nation. You may feel like quite the obvious, no. Allah revealed information in a gradual process. Allah did not share all the details at once. Because if you put the hadith together, you might get confused. To simplify it, Allah shared information. One of the authentic narrations, there was a guy who was acting like Dajjal, by the way, in Medina. You know what I mean? I've heard before. So with time progressing, it made clear that he's not really a Dajjal, and Allah was this is the Prophet ﷺ, he was talking with the Sahaba, and the Prophet talks about Dajjal, he gets so scared. He says, Dajjal goes. So when the Prophet speaks, he's the best speaker, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They got so nervous. You know what they said? Like we thought Dajjal had to walk in. That's how good of a speaker he was, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He made them live the moment. So when they were concerned, they went to the Prophet, he saw in their faces what fear. He said, why you're concerned, why you're scared? He said, Ya Rasulullah, you spoke about Dajjal, and you spoke quietly, you spoke loud, until we thought he's going to walk in any moment now. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, غَيْرُ الدَّجَّالِ أَخْوَفُ عَلَيْكُمْ. Is there anything else I fear over you more than Dajjal? Another meaning, there are other things I fear over you more than Dajjal. Look what he says to make them feel comfortable, right? Dajjal comes out while I'm alive, I will protect you from Dajjal. Allah alayhi wa sallam. But if he comes out when I am no longer on earth alive, then everyone is responsible of their own self. Allah is the Khalifa over every Muslim. So brothers and sisters, because we are our own responsibility toward the Dajjal, because the Prophet ﷺ passed away, I'm going to be sharing with you so many details, and as I promised earlier to talk, and inshallah we'll continue to do that, every hadith specific for the unseen are all narrated, inshallah. So because we are responsible, we're going to show the details. بإذن subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the Prophet ﷺ used to make dua. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ مُصِيبَتَنَا. What does that mean? Translate that for me. Because you should always make a dua. Very frequent. Oh Allah, do not make my calamity in my religion. Because the biggest calamity is not the health, is not in the job, is not in the look, is not in the freedom of question, justice, this or that. The absolute worst thing to fail in, may Allah not make our calamity to our face. Because Dajjal is the biggest calamity to our people. The Prophet ﷺ, look what he said. He says, I know about Dajjal more than any prophet has ever come up with. So you put Adam to Isa. All their information will not come close to the information Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. Not just that, ready for this? How serious Dajjal is, and we're all responsible for our own self. The Prophet says, I know about Dajjal more than Dajjal knows about himself. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So let's go detail, bit by bit. Bismillah. What's his name? The Prophet says his name is Al-Masih. Al-Masih comes, one of the meanings, Mansuh al-Ayn. Is what one of them is white. And the other eye is also defective. Not this one is defective. Both are defective. Ad-Dajjal Mansuh al-Ayn. One eye, so the eyeball is thrown out. You can see the eyeball on the side. If you look at the Dajjal on the side, you can see his actual eye. Then what's the other part of the name? Dajjal. Dajjal is the liar. Dajjal is the two-faced. Dajjal who lies so much that he's such a confusing in the people. He's so good at lying. So what is he? Is he a human being? Yes, he is. He's actually a human being. He is male. And he is short. Then he will have a large body. So short, but massive. Big forehead. All from authentic narration. I want to say all the hadith. He is a red complexion. He has thick, curly hair. Look how detailed Allah said. All this here, all for it. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He is bow-legged. What does that mean? If he stands straight, his knees don't touch. Like he can stand touch your knees if you stand, right? Right now. But if he stands, his legs are bow-legged. There are people like that. So, right? I can have probably got work. That is like that. So these things doesn't explain that. Oh, he's there. All men are bad. Relax. Okay? He's there. What's there in me? He cannot have children. Alhamdulillah. Right? And there's written on his forehead, kafir. On his forehead, kafir. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, يَقْرَأُهُ كُلُّ مُؤْمِنٍ. Only the believers are able to read it. Like what if someone, like grandfather, someone cannot read? Cannot write, do not read. The Prophet says, those who can read and those who cannot read will be able to read kafir and surah. Why? Because of their what? So which we want to focus on mostly on increasing our iman, may Allah strengthen our iman. So then, with all this, what is he going to claim? He claims to be God. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam twice says, he says, أَنَا رَبُّكُمْ وَلَا تَرَوْنَ رَبَّكُمْ حَتَّى تَمُوتُوا. Remember, other prophets and the Sahaba, remember, he says he's God, but remember, you will not see God until you die. Then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us, where will he come from? Now, the Prophet, that's the hadith I shared with you. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, إِنَّهُ خَارِجْ قُلَّةٌ بَيْنَ الشَّامِ وَالْعِرَاقِ. Somewhere between Sham, which is from Syria, or the area of Palestine, or Lebanon, and Iraq. Now, there's two other hadiths. What's the hadith? One hadith says he comes from Khurasan. What's Khurasan? Where is the Palestinian area and so on. And the Prophet even explains the faces of the people that follow him in his first stop, Allahu Alam. Khurasan, he goes in first, and he explains the description of the faces, which matches the faces of the people of Khurasan. They are our brothers, with them, of course, but some fall for the Dajjal and they follow. After Khurasan, where does he go before he becomes Khalas, public? Sham and Iraq, he becomes known to everybody in his town. Fair enough? So far, he's collecting soldiers. Goes to Khurasan, number 2, ready? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, يَتْبَعُ الدَّجَّالِ مِنْ يَهُودِ أَصْفَهَانَ 70,000. He goes to Asbahan, or Asfahan. This city exists till this day. Where is it? It's in Iran. And Asfahan, or Asbahan, both ways of pronunciation, has today the largest Jewish community outside Palestine. The second largest Jewish community in the Middle East is near Asfahan. That's the resources. It's a small number, not too big. I came across about 8,500, basically less than 10,000. How many will follow? 70,000. And the Prophet says, عَلَيْهِمُ الطَّيَالِسَ. They'll be wearing shawls. And the shawls, which is what they would wear in their religious practices, and we don't have no kufiya, whatever, it's one that people wear sometimes, they have the shawl that represents their faith. فَعَاتَ يَمِينًا وَشِمَالًا. It goes all over. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, if you see him, now he's going to pass across earth. If you see him, what do? And I'll come across this again. Read the beginning verses of Surah Al-Kahf. Surah Al-Kahf. So he says, Ya ibad Allah, KÖTU. So he says, believers, servants of Allah, hold tight when you see him and read these words of Allah. Bismillah. Some of us, we might be in a problem. And then once you go to the judge or something, or a teacher, you can express the oppression you receive, you struggle. Then once everything goes away, why did you speak up? Let's have the situation on one state. I got an issue with another person. You cannot talk. Your turn to speak. Well, he's a prophet. After that person left, I took myself. He's like, what happened was 1, 2, 3. Yes, you had the chance to speak in front of them. Now you look like they were defeated. But this happens from someone like human beings like us. Imagine from the judge, the Prophet said to go to these steadfast. Then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said how long he will stay. When we ask in the break, how long? Give the answer. Right, inshallah? He says he will stay for 40 days. 40 يوما. The first day will be equal to a year. And the second day will be equal to a month. The third day will be equal to a week. And the rest of the days are regular days. So now what's in the month of September? 1 day is like a year, 1 day is like a month, 1 day is like a week, 1 day is like the rest of the days. What's in their mind? Salah. This is the greatest generation. This is how we should view these events, the way they view. What happens next? Good. And then what? Allah can wait, inshallah. No, they ask, what should we do for our own self? Allah Akbar. From my end, what do I do? Okay, I read the Qiyam. Do I pray on that day, that is 1 year? Do I pray this 5 salah? Does that make sense, the question? 1 day takes 24 hours, takes a whole year. So the Prophet says, no, there's not enough to pray 5 daily prayers. But to do another qadr, estimate how many salah in 300 years, for example, 300 days. In 300 days, how many salah? 1,500. So in that year, pray as many salah as in 1 year. Allahu Akbar. So you estimate. So then the Sahaba asked, "O Prophet of Allah, how fast does he travel? How does he go so quickly, so slow?" He says, he goes as fast as the cloud hidden by him. He's so fast all across. And the believers maintain their salah. Now the question is, how is your salah? How is it today? Yesterday. How are we doing? Inshallah, and we do that, inshallah, and we work on our salah. Inshallah, it's fantastic. Right? Just yesterday, I was going through a session with one of the children, and I told them, listen, Jannah has a gate. And the gate of Jannah is the key. So how do you get? So the child said, yes. I said, do you know what the key is? Then I asked him the question, the key to the lock was a lock. Do you think any key opens this lock? No. The key that was made for that lock is the only key that unlocks that door. Similarly, in paradise, there's only one kind of key that opens it. And what key is that? So you're so nice. Will you open it? I have the so nice key. I have the so generous key. Will you open it? I know I'm being honest. I'm a really family-friendly key. Wallahi, I'm never the arrogant key. I'm the freedom fighter key. I'm the lifter of oppression key. I'm the justice establishment key. I am the grateful key. No key will open it except the key of Salah. And do you know that Salah has the key? SubhanAllah. Now that child will not get that right. There's a gate, there's a key Salah. There's a key for Salah. I never saw you all holding the key. Right? There's a key to Salah. And that key is wudu. How is your wudu? Honestly, brother, I'm not really sure. That's why I need wudu at home, because I don't know the message to me like, I think he stops wiping under the fox. Yeah, but I heard that in white over the fox, there was leather, and I do. You have to master wudu. You have to master Salah. Is it acceptable? May Allah forgive us. Forgive me, because this is a very critical point of the session about Salah. Can you imagine someone is in the third rak'ah, not sure, is it fourth or is it? So they're nervous. They heard in one lecture there's something known as sahu. The prostration I make to make up for my confusion. They heard. So they get nervous. So they say, no, I don't know, bro, is it 4? I'll play it safe. I'll count it as 3. I'll just add 1 more. So far, so good. what do you do? Says this stuff. I don't know, bro. May Allah forgive us. May Allah forgive us. Okay, what will you do? Let me share with you something. Right, inshallah, there's more than 5, also will be 5. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, and Dajjal comes, so he's army the people, وَيَأْتِي عَلَىٰ قَوْمٍ فَيَدْعُوهُمْ. He tells them, I am God. Who actually believes? I will believe. Once he believes, you know what he says? Go sky. Go earth. Bro. So he's been very rich. Incredible. And then their camels drink from the water, and they increase their milk. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. He goes to another group of people. Do you believe in me? I'm God. I'm not. No, you're not God. No. So then he says, oh, rain. Do not make it rain upon them. And all the water stops, and they have severe drought. Nothing will be left of them in the form of flood. So fitna. So then his fitna is so hard that all the wealth has gone from the Quran rejected. Not just that, he passes by a city. This is what at his spot is passing by. In Khariba. What's Khariba? A wasteland, like a dead land. It's miserable, no shelter, nothing. So he tells the land, Akhriji kunuzik. He says, bring forth all your treasures. Everything opens up, gold, silver, treasures, vegetation. It's incredible. I think they're so serious. You know to what extent? The Prophet ﷺ says, to the best generation ever, whoever hears the Dajjal came out, do not try to see who he is, how he looks like. Go far from him. Go away from him. Do not present yourself to him. I just want to see. No. Why? He says, the Prophet says, Wallahi, a man comes to see me. And he thinks that man is Muslim. He's called a believer. I agree that November 10th, I know. I said, well, I said, no woman. يتبعه and that's the only things may Allah protect us. So then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, what else will he do? He will come forth with fire and water. I want to understand. Imagine on one side of a Dajjal, he will have a lot of fire. On the other side, he will have a lot of water. It looks like paradise. It looks like gorgeous sea, like Maldives, whatever it is, amazing. And this the absolute disaster flame fire. But the Prophet says his fire is paradise. His paradise is fire. So then he says, if he's walking towards you, how intimidating that can be. If he's walking towards you, then jump. The Prophet says, Allah, you have to face him, then jump into that fire. Because it is water. It was being the Jannah. Then he says, look at this. If it was difficult, you see the fire, I know it was this, but it's ridiculous, it's crazy, I know the Prophet. He says, well, if it's so hard, close your eyes. You get to do an MRI, right? You go to the it's much more your eye than any other MRI. They will protect you. We never need MRI. It's grave, will protect us. Right? So he says, well, he said, close your eyes. And do this, then go towards the water. And then go towards the fire, then go and drink water from water. So the eye, another thing we think in the Prophet, the eye, watch what you see, it impacts your faith. If you're having a hard time, avoid looking at the haram, an arrow towards the heart will protect us. Then he says, he partners with the shaitan. This is one of the terrifying things, personally speaking. He says, from the fitna of Dajjal, he goes to a Bedouin. He says to the Bedouin, if I resurrect your mom and dad, now many of you have parents who passed away, my father passed away, and all those who passed away. So this Bedouin, his mom and dad both died. And he's an adult. So he tells him, if I resurrect your mom and dad, would you have any other book? I said, of course. فيتمثل له شيطانان في صورة أم واحدة. he works with the devil to become the shape of his mom and dad. Not done. Ready for this? Crazy part? Mom and dad are not just images. They come and speak to you and said, "Ya Bunay, Habibi," sweet words. The mom and dad that died, and you look at the pictures, you can't imagine seeing them alive again. They will tell you, Habibi, son, daughter. He goes school to his halaqat. He's the one who's always been teaching you. You're lucky today by the time you see Allah. Leaving. That faces that choice. That's why the sister just asked me here. She said about the sisters. They will be part of the Nabi's army. There's actually, this is recording. There's actually a group of sisters tomorrow going for that. Legitimately tomorrow. Comfortable. My brother, come on now. They are. Okay? And we're proud to say that. Brother, the Prophet ﷺ had a sister asked, Ya Rasulullah, is there jihad for the women? Right? So she became mujahida. The Prophet said, yes, there is jihad. That is the type of jihad on women. There's no bloodshed in it. Jihadun bila qital. What's the jihad? Hajj and Umrah. So we have a group of sisters go for Umrah tomorrow. Inshallah. So may Allah bless all of us. Well deserved, wallahi, well deserved. May Allah accept you as a mujahida. We go as Amirin. All our boys. Okay? But you are straight up mujahida. Allahumma barik. May Allah make it easy for all our sisters, yeah. And may Allah allow all of you to go in the way that's acceptable by Allah. So then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he explains. What did the sister ask me? She said, well, if they will not be with the army, there's a hadith about a man tying up his female relatives, like mom, sisters. What is that all about? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, yes. He sees a man, sees a lot of people fall into a dajjal, and he sees that his family members, specifically from his female relatives, are being very impacted. What's mom? What's mom? It's dad, it's this. Look what he's doing. From the emotional, from the rahmah, some, not all. So the Prophet said, this man is so nervous that his mom, his wife, sister, daughter will go out to Dajjal. So what does he do? He actually ties them up. When the Prophet ﷺ says there's no country on earth, no village, what does it mean? Even the cities will come across. If a village you go to, you will pass all cities except Mecca and Medina. So the Prophet ﷺ, he comes one time towards the Medina and an angel will destroy. When you come to Medina, you'll be crushed. So what happens? Look at this. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, then a Dajjal comes like an earthquake. When he does the earthquake, people from Medina leave. Something from Medina leave. Who are these people? Who are these people? They were hypocrites that were hiding in Medina. They were using human shields. They want to stay in Medina. So he does the earthquake. فيخرج كل كافر ومنافق. May Allah protect us, رب العالمين. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam makes sure that we learn this dua. If we take a picture, this is something that all of us should be aware of, inshallah. We're going to be done, inshallah, I promise. We don't see the time limit. 9:30 is our max, inshallah. This is the dua. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to say this dua at the end of every salah. Oh Allah, إني أعوذ بك من عذاب جهنم. I seek your refuge from the punishment of the hellfire. ومن عذاب القبر. Number 2, and Allah, I ask you to protect me from the punishment of the grave. ومن فتنة المحيا والممات, and from the trial of life and death. Death alone is a trial by itself. May Allah make us strong. Say Ameen. And lastly, Ya Allah, protect me from the trial of the Masih al-Dajjal. If he, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his faith alone is greater than all of us put together. Yes? He said this at the end of every salah. He took it seriously. What about you and I? Make sense? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam teaching us dua and reading. That's the first thing. There's another authentic narration. You read the last 10 verses of it. KAHF. So now you have, what's the first one? You read the first, and then you can read the last. How about we all memorize the KAHF? Inshallah, all right? Memorize al-KAHF, may Allah make it easy for us, Rabbil Alameen. Then, being a true believer is what saves you from a Dajjal. Not just information. Today, so much information, right? A lot of information, right? But this information will not save you until you live by the information that you receive. And here you will hear the last person a Dajjal will attempt to harass. Ready? The last one is a young man. Where is he coming from? He's coming from Medina. So then the soldiers of a Dajjal say, where are you going? I want to go to see this guy that came out. They said, what guy? We're going to kill you. So one of the soldiers says, did not our God, Dajjal, tell us not to kill someone unless we get an approval? Like, let's get his approval first. Because the obedience, subhanAllah. Right? So then they went to a Dajjal. This guy is so and so. So then a Dajjal goes to this man. Then when the believer sees him, the believer says, Ya ayyuhan nas, because there's a lot of people. Hada Dajjal. Wallahi, this is the Dajjal the Prophet told us about it. The Dajjal gets angry. If he can expose the Dajjal. So he gets so angry. Then he says, go and hit his head. So the Dajjal, with an order for breaking his head, and as they're smacking him, they hit his back and stomach. So they knock him out, punch him so bad, torturing him. So the Dajjal says, as the soldiers are torturing him, Awala tu'min bi? Am I not your Lord? So he says, Anta al-Masih al-Kazzab. You're the liar Messiah. You're not Isa ibn Maryam Masih. You're the liar. So then Dajjal tells his soldiers, if I kill this man and I resurrected, will your faith be shaken? Because Dajjal is seeing the strength of that young man, shaking that faith of whom? The soldiers of Dajjal. So now Dajjal does not care about him anymore. He's focusing on his army. So far, and that's what he did for this one. He will try to strengthen other people through our own blood. May Allah forgive us. So he says, if I kill him, I resurrect him, will you doubt that I'm God? He said, no, if you do that, will not doubt. For you, Allah, bring me the chainsaw. And then the chainsaw is put over this man. SubhanAllah. He cuts him in half. Oh, so he was right? Oh, wait. He cuts him in half. Then he says, let him two bodies. Even the Prophet says, then he says, come, get up. So the two bodies come back. So then he tells him, I told him, do you not believe? He says, Wallahi, what you did made me believe even more you're the Masih al-Dajjal. They want to kill us, they make us stronger. They want to shed blood, they make us even more. Subhanallah. So then he gets so angry, فَيَأْخُذَ الدَّجَّالَ. The Dajjal grabs him, and now he wants to strike his neck and cut his head off. As he's getting the knife and he does this, Allah makes between the collarbone and this area, Allah puts copper, it has. So then the knife comes and it strikes the copper, and he does not cut his neck. And he goes crazy. You can't kill him. When the man says, he will never do anything to anyone after this. So the Dajjal comes and he throws him away into what is known as the water, or what's known as the fire, which is what the Jannah. When the Prophet says, هذا أعظم الناس شهادة عند رب العالمين. This is the greatest martyr in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once he throws him and he's excited and he's happy, the Mahdi is still working. The Mahdi, this is at the end of time. Mahdi has his army. They're getting prepared. They are like a fortress. They're about to pray. As they're about to pray, Salah, someone walks into that fortress. And when they look, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, دَعَقَ اللَّهُ الْمَسِيحُ عِيسَى بْنُ مَرْيَمَ. Jesus, the son of Mary, comes. Now let's talk a little bit, where does he come from? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, He says that he descends عند المنارة البيضاء شرقي دمشق. This is as detailed as it gets. He says there's a white minaret in the eastern side of Damascus, Syria. He will descend بين مهرودتين. SubhanAllah. He'll be wearing two garments. What color? Beige. That's how detailed. Then he says, واضعا كفيه. He will be going down, putting his hands on the wings of angels. إذا طأطأ رأسه, if he were to look down, what happens? Drops of water fall. So it looks like just fresh powder. And إذا رفع عيسى بن مريم, when he looks up, تحدر منه ثمان كاللؤلؤ. Now the water will not drop on the floor, because it's where the water will drop on his face. It's like pearls. Beautiful human being. Then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says about his skin color, complexion, and humrati wal bayan. So between reddish and whitish, or fair skin as some say. So then Isa ibn Maryam, when he descends, where does he go? Towards al-Mahdi. Now, he walks into an Asrina. You know how he came? He comes, he goes right to al-Mahdi. So when he comes, he sees al-Mahdi is about to pray wa salah. Fajr, we've got 5 minutes. As he's walking, he sees Isa ibn Maryam. When he stops the salah, he says, he's delaying at least 5 minutes. Isa Allah al-Azim. Deliberately for what? What? Isa ibn Maryam walking, but he did something interesting. They say to Isa, and the Prophet says the words, ready? فَيَقُولُ أَمِيرُهُمُ الْمَهْدِيُّ. What's the words? Rasul said that. The Mahdi tells Isa, تعال صلي بنا إلى أنت إمام. Then Isa ibn Maryam says, no, this is an honor Allah gave to the Ummah, one of the Ummah lead the Salah. And Mahdi insists, la, you, this is okay, right? Wallah, brother, you, no, wallah, I'm not ready. That's what they use, that's what they will do. Mahdi says, no, you're Isa ibn Maryam, I cannot, you're the Prophet of Allah. And Isa is better than Mahdi, no doubt. But Mahdi, and Isa says no. Then the Prophet says, فَيَضَعُ عِيسَى يَدَهُ بَيْنَ كَتِفَيْهِ. Isa will put his hand between the two shoulders of al-Mahdi, and he says, تقدم فصلي فإنها لك أقيمة. الإقامة was made for you. Go pray. فيصلي بهم المهدي. الله أكبر. And right at the end of the Salah, Prophet Isa and the Mahdi, they get the army assembled. And then Isa says, well, open the fortress. Go to the other end. And Dajjal and his army, especially from who? Yahud. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, فَيَفْتَحُونَ. Once they open the door, the believers are focusing on the soldiers of the Dajjal. Isa is focused on Dajjal himself. So the Dajjal, proud that I got this, right? So why? Eye contact with him. So Dajjal, when the Dajjal is looking around, looking at the army, he has eye contact with Isa ibn Maryam. He sees that, he runs away. Isa ibn Maryam, فَيَذُوبُ كَذَوَبَانِ الْمِلْحِ فِي الْمَاءِ. He dissolves, the salt dissolves in water, and he runs. And Isa runs after him. And the believers are fighting a very strong fight. The Prophet ﷺ says, the believers will fight, especially the Yahud. And I already clarified at the beginning of the session that not all the Yahud are evil, obviously. Right? It's a one-on-one logic, not even one-on-one Islam. One-on-one logic and Islam. But much of this army are Yahud. So they fight the Yahud so much until the Yahud cannot face them. So they hide on that day, not behind a car or behind a building or structure that's massive, because as I mentioned, it looks like, you know what, civilization was horses and all these things, swords, right? They hide behind a tree, they hide behind a big rock. So the Prophet says, nothing they hide behind except that thing speaks. The tree speaks, the rock speaks, except one tree, al-Gharqada. There's one tree that will not speak. Everything will speak. The wall, the podium, the pole, everything, the room. The swimming club, it will speak. Except the Gharqada tree. What will it say? Ya Abdullah al-Muslim, أوصى بك الله المسلم هذا يهودي فتعالى فاقتله. behind you. So now the wall exposes, there's someone behind me. Don't fall for it, be ready, come and get rid of him. So then يدركه, and he comes and he gets rid of him. So now the Masih is running after the Dajjal, and he finally comes the Dajjal, and he had a harba, a spear, and then he stabbed the Dajjal, the biggest wire. We see a lot of resemblance in today's time. May Allah protect us and make us of those that insight. See what I mean? Not just sight, but insight as well. He kills a Dajjal, and the Prophet says, عند باب لد, next to the gate, eastern gate of the door of Lud. That time the hadith was mentioned, there's no place known as Lud. But today there's a city known as Lud in Palestine. Allahu Akbar. So he comes and he kills him at the city of Lud, and then he grabs the spear to show it to all the believers. We got rid of him, and the blood of the Dajjal drops, and the believers win. And now they greet one another. The believers now is a Prophet Salam. So Isa ibn Maryam wipes their faces, tells them their places in Jannah. Great job, fantastic job. While he's celebrating with them, a caller calls out loud, Harriz ibadi ila tur. Isa, believers run to the mountain of Tur, which is not a Sinna, the one was best. Go there. Why? I'm sending slaves of mine, but not even Isa can fight. Who are these people? Ya'juj and Ma'juj. What's the details? What happens? When will the world end? What about the sunrise from the west? All of that in the finale. Inshallah. جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
But I feel that there was one topic that is interspersed in all of this. I referenced it many times, but I never really gave a dedicated lecture to it. So I felt that in fact it deserves an entire lecture about the signs of Judgment Day, and that is the wars or the fighting or the Armageddon or the great battle that will take place. So I referenced this a number of times. There are many traditions that mention warfare towards the end of times. And the fact of the matter is that these traditions, although numerous, they are cryptic as usual because we don't have a chronology. We don't have all of these hadith talking about one war or many small wars or wars that go over many decades or many centuries. We don't know. It's simply predictions of Judgment Day. And there are some wars that simply, some hadith that simply say, of the signs of Judgment Day is qital. There will be warfare. And the Prophet predicted you will have days of haraj. They said, what is haraj? He said, bloodshed. So there are predictions of lots of wars. Now, does this mean the time of the Sahaba, the Civil War, all over throughout Islamic history when the Muslims are fighting? Or we are talking about only one time frame? This is where there's no clear-cut answer, and Allah knows best. So today's lecture will be somewhat, a lot of it is my own ijtihad in terms of piecing together. Obviously the hadith I'm quoting you are hadith, there's no ijtihad there. But trying to find a chronology, trying to make sense out of all of these hadith, it's human ijtihad. And Allah knows best. It is my reading, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best, that these hadith predict, firstly, a continuation of wars from the time of the Sahaba up until Judgment Day, or war to be more precise, up until the Great War. But secondly, there are a number of hadith that mention civil war between the Muslims towards the end of times, a massive war that will take place between the Muslims. And also, there's a series of hadith that mention a big war between Muslims and an ally and a non-Muslim. So Muslims with one group of non-Muslims versus another group of non-Muslims. And also, this is genre number 2. And then genre number 3, there are hadith about the big war. In Arabic, it is called al-malhamatul kubra. This is a prophetic term. Al-malhama. Malhama means the disaster, the catastrophe, or the bloodshed. Malhama, just the bloodshed. And this is the equivalent of the Christian concept of the Armageddon. So there are a number of hadith that mention a civil war. That's not the Armageddon. That's before the Armageddon. Then there are hadith that mention a big war, but not quite the big war. So there will be a big war, but not the big war. This is always Sahih because some ulama have merged them all together. And then there are hadith that mention the big war. And of course, the big war, the Malhama, is between Isa and Dajjal. That is the end, the final battle that will take place. After that, there might not be any more wars. After that, as we're going to come to later on, that might be the end of all wars, and then other things will happen after that. So, Allah knows best. This seems to be in a nutshell, what we are talking about. Once again, first and foremost, a series of continual battles, mini battles. The Prophet ﷺ predicted, once the sword is unsheathed from my ummah, it will never be put back. This is a generic hadith. The Muslims will be continually fighting many battles from the time of the Sahaba. Major battles took place: Battle of Siffin, Battle of Jamal. Continuation throughout Islamic history, Muslims have been fighting one another. You look at right now what's happening, Muslims are fighting one another. Right? This is standard. It's going to happen. Then there will come a time where there will be major wars between the Muslims. Then there will come a time there will be a major war between Muslim and non-Muslim on one side and one other non-Muslim on the other. Now, whether this is going to be before and after the big major war between Muslims, we don't know. We don't know. And then it will conclude with what? With the big war, the Marhamatul Kubra. So today, inshallah ta'ala, let's discuss some of those traditions and get a clear understanding of what this notion is. We begin with the famous hadith in Sahih Tarikh ibn Asakir, which is oft quoted many times in an authentic hadith, where Abdullah ibn Hawala said, we were with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and we complained to him how poor we were and that we didn't even have clothes to wear. We're complaining to him. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, rejoice, don't worry about that. For I am not worried that you will live in poverty. I'm not worried that you're going to live in poverty. Wallahi, this ummah will be in continual good until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up the lands of the Faris, the Persians, and the lands of the Romans, that's the Byzantine Empire, and the lands of Himyar, that is Yemen. So in Mecca, the Prophet predicted, don't worry, we will conquer the Persian Empire, and that happened. And we will conquer the Byzantine Empire, and that happened. And we will conquer Yemen, and all of that happened. Then the Prophet said, you will become 3 armies. So he said, you will become. This is the Ummah. This is the civil war we talked about between the Muslims. You will become 3 armies. Jund bil-Sham, wa Jund bil-Iraq, wa Jund bil-Yemen. An army will be in Sham, an army will be in Iraq, and an army will be in Yemen. And wealth will be so much that a man will be given 100 dinars. Now 100 dinars, maybe if I were to say in our times, like $5,000. It's a large amount, but not an obscenely large amount. 5,000 is no joke. 100 dinars is a good amount of money. Right? A person will give 100 dinars and think, this is nothing. This is not a good amount. In other words, wealth will be so much that a good amount of wealth will be considered absolutely trivial. Ibn Hawala said, Ya Rasulullah, when that happens, which of these 3 armies should I be with? Which of these 3 armies should I be with? The Prophet ﷺ said, I tell you to be in the army of Sham, of Syria, because it is the chosen of Allah's people, and it is where the Qiyamah will take place. So the Prophet ﷺ predicted that there will be 3 armies, an army in Sham, an army in Iraq, and an army in Yemen, and he told Ibn Hawala, choose the army in Yemen. I already mentioned, in Sham. I already mentioned another hadith that I mentioned right before going for Hajj. We mentioned that when I mentioned the concept of the Mahdi. We went over this hadith quickly. It is in the 6th book, so authentic hadith, PUNÖN ibn Majah, where our Prophet said, this is about the Mahdi. We jumped to the Mahdi part. There was a phrase there I glossed over, and that is, يَقْتَتِلُ عِنْدَ كَنْزِكُمْ ثَلَاثٌ كُلُّهُمْ إِبْنَ خَلِيفَةٍ. 3 sons of a Khalifa will fight amongst you at your treasures, for your treasures. What treasure is this? Some have said this is the treasure in Mecca. There was a treasure buried once upon a time. But the hadith doesn't mention Mecca, and it is my opinion, it doesn't make sense to interpret it as Mecca. Rather, there will be a treasure of the Ummah, oil, natural resource, Allah knows best. There will be a treasure belonging to the Ummah. and 3 sons of a Khalifa, 3 princes. All of their fathers are royal family, all of their fathers are ruling. So 3 sons of a Khalifa will fight one another. So these are within the Ummah. This is the internal civil war that we talked about. And none of them will be victorious. They're all 3 going to fail. None of them will be victorious. And then the black flags will come from Khurasan, and then the Mahdi, and then the hadith goes on. So we jump to the Mahdi, but where does it begin? There will be an internal civil war. And what this hadith shows is that the Mahdi will come at a time when the Muslim Ummah itself is internally fighting. And the Mahdi will unify the Ummah from within. This is pretty clear, that the Mahdi will unify the Ummah. The Ummah will need a leader. The Ummah will need somebody they can trust, somebody whose integrity is beyond doubt. And the person that they will look to and the person they will unanimously go behind is none other than the Mahdi. So there will be massive civil war. But the Mahdi comes and that civil war will be finished, because how can now you fight when the Mahdi is there? So this is a very clear indication that there shall be a time of massive internal civil war between the Ummah. And frankly, when you look at what is happening now with the internal superpowers, I don't like mentioning names, but you use your common sense and knowledge of politics. Right now, there's already massive wars going on. Right now, Muslims are dividing amongst themselves, each one of them doing its own, and Muslims are being harmed in the process. Allah Musta'an. What's even worse, by the way, is that these are being used by non-Muslims, right? The problem comes, the superpowers of the world are using their proxies in these regions. Each one of them thinks that they will be the lapdog of the big superpower. In reality, the superpowers never care about their lapdogs. In any case, I'm going to my tangent here. What I'm saying, we should be slightly terrified. No, we should be very terrified, looking at what is happening in the world, looking at these ahadith about the end of times, and Allah knows best. So this is the issue of the internal war. Let us now move on to other wars that are predicted. One hadith mentioned that one of the tabi'un was in Kufa, and Kufa was the land of Ibn Mas'ud. Ibn Mas'ud established his madrasa in Kufa. The greatest Sahabi of Kufa was Ibn Mas'ud, and he died in Kufa as well. So Ibn Mas'ud was in Kufa, and one of these tabi'in, his name is Usayd ibn Jabir, he said, one day it was very cloudy and a dark storm, a dust storm came in the daytime, blocked the sun, and it seemed very terrifying. So a man came shouting to the masjid, Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Mas'ud, the day of judgment is coming. Looking at what is happening, he became terrified. He was running to Ibn Mas'ud, saying, look, this is Qiyamah coming. Ibn Mas'ud then stood up amongst the people. The people are looking to him for comfort, for wisdom. The people are terrified. They're gathered in the masjid. Ibn Mas'ud stood up. He said the Qiyamah will not come until, then he gave a series of predictions. Now, important point before I move on. Whenever a Sahabi, listen to this as a rule, whenever a companion mentions something about ilm al-ghayb, automatically what he says becomes a hadith. This is a rule. Whenever a Sahabi says something about the knowledge of the unseen, if a Sahabi says that, oh, righteous person will be given a white palace in Jannah that has gardens. If a Sahabi speaks of Jannah, if a Sahabi speaks of Judgment Day, on the day of judgment such and such will happen. If a Sahabi speaks about the signs of the Judgment Day, automatically that statement gets a free upgrade, goes to first class, right? Free upgrade. What is the upgrade? It becomes hadith. Why? Because how could a Sahabi speak about ilm al-ghayb unless he heard it from the Prophet ﷺ? Now, if a Sahabi says something is haram or halal, this remains the opinion of a Sahabi. Because haram and halal is the ijtihad. Haram and halal, you have the right for ijtihad. And the Sahaba differed about haram and halal, like all of the great scholars did. If this is haram, this is halal, the Sahaba differed. They have the right for ijtihad. Their ijtihad has a high level, but it doesn't become Quran and Sunnah. But when a Sahabi speaks about Allah Azza wa Jal, His names and attributes, the judgment, the signs of judgment, automatically gets a free upgrade. In this hadith, the hadith begins as a statement of Ibn Mas'ud, then in the middle, automatically Ibn Mas'ud says, and then the Prophet said. So we even prove the rule through this hadith. that he's narrating what the Prophet ﷺ said, and then in the middle of the hadith, he subconsciously says, and then the Prophet ﷺ said. The hadith does not begin in the middle where he says, and then the Prophet ﷺ said. It begins from the beginning because it talks about the knowledge of the unseen. So go back to the hadith, interesting hadith. Ibn Mas'ud stood up. By the way, this hadith is in Sahih Muslim, I forgot to mention, and it's a long hadith. Ibn Mas'ud stood up and he said, the Qiyamah is not going to come until you see these signs. And these signs haven't come, so this cannot be the Qiyamah. Number one, he said, people will not be able to divide their inheritance. This means massacres and death will be so profound that a person will have no family left. And people will not be happy over ghanima or booty. Once again, means there's no family. And this is explicitly mentioned, we'll talk about it. Then he pointed towards Sham, Syria. He is in Iraq. He points towards the land that is known as Sham. And he said, and an enemy will gather forces against the Muslims, and the Muslims will gather forces against them. A man in the audience said, do you mean Rome, the Romans? He said, yes. Now the Romans refers to European civilization, Christian empires. And there's no problem extrapolating the concept of Romans to the modern nations that look up to that empire as being their, if not biological, their theological and their intellectual ancestors. We all know, went over this as well. So the term Rome, can de facto apply to the majority civilization, the superpowers of our times. So, and by the way, this is interesting because again, these are predictions that we are now seeing taking place. So, Ibn Mas'ud said, yes, I mean the Romans. And at that time, there will be a severe fighting, a fierce fighting. The Muslims will send a battalion to fight to death, and they will not return. They will die. They will fight until night. Neither side will be victorious over the other. On the second day, the Muslims will send another battalion, and they will fight to death, and they will not return victorious. On the third day, the same thing will happen. And then on the fourth day, so for 3 days, Muslims are going in, and it is going to be massacre after massacre. Nobody will remain alive from the first batches that go. On the fourth day, Allah Azza wa Jalla will grant victory to the Muslims, and the enemy will be defeated. So there will be 4 days of battle somewhere in Bilad al-Sham. Now, is this the great Armageddon, or is this the precursor to the Armageddon? This is not the great Armageddon, it looks like. This is the precursor. This is a massive war that will take place before the Armageddon. And the hadith goes on. And this is from the statement. This will be a battle the likes of which have never seen before. This is very terrifying. In human history, no battle has taken place that is more terrifying and more severe than that battle that will take place towards the end of times. And then Ibn Mas'ud said, and this is so powerful, and it's not Ibn Mas'ud, it is from the Prophet ﷺ, so much so that a bird that will fly over them will fall down dead. Now, you tell me, before I move on, you tell me, no matter how many people are killed by the swords on this land, will it affect a bird in the heavens? No. What will affect a bird in the heavens? Not swords. That's the point. Not swords. Something is going to happen that a bird in the heavens will be flying over, it will come down dead. And then the hadith goes on. Out of a family of 199 will perish and 1 will survive. The attrition rate in this war, 99%. Allah understand. What war in human history has had 99% death? None. I don't know of any. 99%. The victory is given to the 1%. 99%. And this is when the Prophet said, so how can anyone be happy over ghanima or any inheritance be divided? In other words, may Allah protect all of us. If someone were to give you $1 million but you have no family, Allah, what sane person would choose that? Family is worth more than this whole dunya. So the Prophet is saying, how can anybody be happy when he gets all the ghanima and 99 of his family had, and he's nobody left, no parents, no children, nothing left? How can anybody be happy? What is the point of that ghanima? It's all gone. How will inheritance be divided when there will be no family left? So this war will destroy 99% of those fighting in it. While they are doing this, and they are finishing the battle, collecting the ghanima, recovering, they will hear there's a bigger calamity than this war. What could be a bigger calamity? Somebody will shout out that the Dajjal has come where your families have been left behind. So in that state, tired, bruised, bleeding, that their families are being attacked, wherever is remaining in the land that they left behind, Bilad al-Sham, wherever there is, they will run, they will rush back to that land, and they will discover that it is a lie. It is not true. And in one hadith it is mentioned that they will send their 10 best horsemen to go verify that news. The 10 fastest horsemen. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, I know their names and the names of their forefathers and the colors of their horsemen, the colors of the horses, and they will be the best horsemen on the face of this earth. Now, does this mean we will go back to horses and swords? If there is that type of war, in all likelihood we will. If there is that type of war, when nuclear weapons and whatnot and ivory side and whatnot, then we will go back to those days when there was no electricity or whatnot. We're going to go back to this. Or is it possible that when the Prophet is saying horse, he means a vehicle? This is also possible. It's not too much of a stretch. And Allah knows best. So this hadith mentions. Now, does this hadith mention the Mahdi? Yes or no? Where? But does this hadith mention the Mahdi? No, it does not. But other hadith mention that the Mahdi will be the one that will be there when the news comes that the Dajjal is around. So it appears that this big war that is being referenced is a war that the Mahdi will participate in, even though he's not mentioned in this one. Right? So it is a war between Rome and between the Muslims. It is a massive war. Now, many have said this hadith is a reference to the Armageddon. Well, it could be true. Because here's the point. Is the Armageddon one battle or is it a series of battles? It goes back. If it's only one battle, then in all likelihood that will be Dajjal and Isa bin Maryam. But if it is a series of major battles, then it makes sense that this hadith, in fact, is one of those big battles of the Armageddon. Allah knows best. The next hadith we'll mention, which is a very cryptic one, and it has been used by the terrorist group known as the Islamic State as their basis. We don't agree with this group, and I have very publicly criticized them. And all you need to do is look at how much damage they have done a lot of times. By the way, there are many lectures about this. Obviously, I'm new to the community still, but you will know, inshallah, when we go on. SubhanAllah, look at what the Prophet said about the Kharijites, the Khawarij. He said, their speech is beautiful, but their actions are deadly. Their speech sounds good. It is sweet, but what they do is evil. And this is exactly what these groups, all of them. If you just listen to snippets, oh, we will re-establish Allah's Quran, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Then you look at what they do, and the number of Muslims that they have killed, and their tactics, and you realize these are exactly the Khawarij, like the Prophet said. Read the descriptions of the Kharijites. Look at what they did to the Sahaba. Look at their philosophy, attitude, and wallahi, you will see all of these groups. They might speak that which sounds like honey, but in reality, their harm is much worse than even the harm that non-Muslims do. And this is the reality that we see with our own eyes. So this group known as the so-called Islamic State, which is now in its last legs and it will inshallah be completely eliminated. This group used the hadith I'm about to quote you as its basis, as one of its main bases. And it is authentic hadith, and it is the hadith in Sahih Muslim. Abu Hurairah narrated that the judgment will not come until a room will come up to fight you at a place called A'maq or Dabiq. Now, Dabiq is, and A'maq is close to it. Dabiq is a city in Syria. And the so-called Islamic State took it as its capital. And they intentionally fought to get a small city, a very mid-sized or small-sized city. They wanted to capture that city. Why? Because it's mentioned in this hadith. And we had said a few weeks ago that it is not allowed to do what? Do you remember? I mentioned this very clearly. It is not allowed to do what? So write a screenplay from the hadith. We don't write a Hollywood drama from the hadith. It happens, it will happen. We do not extract the drama and enact it. We've seen what happened throughout history when people have attempted to do that. No, we don't do that. It happens, it will happen. But you don't think you are the one who's going to go do that. We have seen time and time again, people have attempted to do that, and it has failed miserably. And one of the most important examples, this is another example of ISIS and DAWAH and whatnot. Another example I mentioned is Juhayman in his takeover of the Kaaba, and he thought he would enact all of the hadith that are mentioned, but he couldn't, because again, you have to pick and choose, just like over here. But anyway, so the hadith goes on. That the Romans will come and fight you at a land called Al-Dabiq. And the best of the people of earth from the city of Medina will leave Medina and fight against them. When they are getting ready for war, lining up for war, this is very cryptic. The Romans will say to the Muslims, leave us with the group amongst you who have forsaken their religion. We want to fight them. I'll explain. The Muslims will say, La wallahi, we will never leave our brethren and will never abandon them to you. I'll finish the hadith in the next one. So the battle will rage on. The battle will rage on. 1/3 of the Muslims will retreat out of cowardice, and Allah will never forgive them. When the battle gets tough, they will flee. And the Prophet said they will never be forgiven. And they will be the best of shuhada. They stood their ground, they died martyrs, and they will be the best of shuhada. And 1/3 will conquer, 1/3 will win. And they will not be tested. Maybe the test of the grave, maybe the test of the akhirah. They will not be tested. Allah will bless them. They will not be tested. And they, meaning that 1/3, will then conquer Constantinople. Again, we'll explain this in a while, because it's a long hadith. When they will be dividing their ghanima, after they've hung their swords on the trees to be boiled, then they will hear Shaitan cry out that the Dajjal has appeared amongst your children. Thinking it to be true, they will march to fight the Dajjal, but they will find it to be a lie, and they will reach Bilad al-Sham, Syria, and when they have lined up to pray Fajr, that is when Isa ibn Maryam will come down after the Dajjal has actually come. And he will then lead the Muslims in war and battle. And when Aduwwallah, the Dajjal, sees Isa ibn Maryam, he will melt like salt is dissolved in water. And the Prophet said, if he were to be left in that state, he would die. But Isa will kill him, and the people will see the blood of Dajjal on the weapon of Isa. And hadith. Now, again, this hadith is very, very cryptic. It mentions many things. First and foremost, it also reiterates the previous concept of a massive war between the Romans and the Muslims. Now, in this hadith, it mentions 1/3 only will die, whereas the previous hadith mentions 99% will die. As I said, it appears there will be multiple battles, not just one. And in some of them, 99%, and in some of them, 1/3. This hadith mentions that this army will conquer Constantinople, whereas the previous hadith does not mention that. So maybe there are multiple wars going on in the world, and the Dajjal's announcement will take place in all of them. Shaitan's going to frighten the Muslims. The Dajjal is here. They're going to be expecting the Dajjal because they're seeing the hadith take place. So Shaitan will use it as a tactic. So maybe multiple groups will run back to Bilad al-Sham, and there they will be with the Mahdi, and the Mahdi will then be leading them in Salah, and the Dajjal will actually have come at that point in time, and then Isa will come down, as we had mentioned. Another hadith that mentions all of these as well is that the Prophet ﷺ said, the fortress of Muslims on the day of the Malhama, this is where it is mentioned, the Armageddon, the Malhama, will be Ghulta, which is a city near Damashq, one of the best cities in Sham. This hadith is Abu Dawood ibn Authentic. 3 things are mentioned: Ghulta, Damashq, and Bilad al-Sham. Ghulta is a small city. It is still inhabited to this day, and it is maybe an hour or so outside of Damascus. I don't know exact timing, but maybe the Spirit brother can tell me, but it's not far from Damascus. When the Prophet said this hadith, Damashq, Ghulta, and Bilad al-Sham were the homeland of the Christian Byzantine Empire. This is like somebody saying, oh, Texas, California, these are not lands that belong to Islam. But the Prophet predicted that Dimashq and Ghouta will be a part of the Ummah. And that when the great Armageddon takes place, I'm translating Malhama as Armageddon, when the great Malhama takes place, the fortress, the base, the camp of the believers will be where? It will be in Ghouta. It will be in the city of Ghouta in Bilad al-Sham. And of course, the concept of Bilad al-Sham is mentioned many times in the hadith. The Prophet said, hadith is al-Hakim is authentic. When the fitan occur, Iman will be in Bilad al-Sham. When the fitan take place, when the big civil wars, Iman will be in Bilad al-Sham. Now let's pause for a while and look at these hadith and try to extract a series of incidents. What can we extract from all of this? So, first and foremost, realize that Bilad al-Sham doesn't just mean Syria. Bilad al-Sham in classical Arabic, pre-partition, when I say partition, don't think 1947, it's a partition of India, Pakistan, and whatnot. I mean pre-partition, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. The Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1917, and then the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which then acted it. Before the partition of the Muslim Ummah, before England and France decided to carve up the Ummah and gifts out to the victors, and they took the Ottoman Empire. Before that, Bilad al-Sham was essentially what we now call Syria, and of course also Jordan, and of course Palestine, and of course the occupying land that I don't want to mention now, the country that is the occupying regime. So all of this was Bilad al-Sham. Okay, this entire region is called Bilad al-Sham. It's not just modern day Syria. Yes, Dimashq is Bilad al-Sham, but Palestine is also Bilad al-Sham. And the cities of Palestine and the cities in the modern occupying state, all of them are Bilad al-Sham. Understand this point. Okay, so realize this. Secondly, it shows that towards the very end of all of these trials, the Muslims will be united and they will be fighting outsiders. They will be fighting non-Muslims. And the people from other lands will come, like Medina. They will come because they know that they have to now fight on the side of the truth. So the fact that even from Medina, people are traveling all the way to be fighting, it shows that they recognize what is going place. It is also very clear that these wars are taking place with the Mahdi being alive. And when the Mahdi is alive, there is no civil war. How can you fight when the Mahdi is on one side? Right? So this is a war between the Mahdi and the believers on one side and the unbelievers on the other side. This is a very clear issue. It also shows, as I said, that in all likelihood we're talking about multiple wars. Or maybe, Allah knows best, the Mahdi himself is going region to region. In one battle, 1/3 will die. In another battle, 99% will die. Allah knows best. Again, we don't know. We're just putting all of these together. And the fact that the bird is mentioned shows that this isn't your typical war. That chemical or nuclear or whatever seems very likely in these types of hadith. Allahu musta'an. Also, what is this cryptic phrase where the Rum are going to say, hand us our brethren? And the Muslims will say, no, they are our brethren. What is all of this? This is very interesting. It appears, and Allah knows best, that there will be a large group of converts from Bilad al-Rum to the land of Islam. And they will be fighting on the side of the Mahdi and the Muslims. And the Bilad al-Rum are going to view them as being traitors. And from their perspective, they're right. From their perspective, they're right. They are traitors. So they will say, first, we want to deal with these guys because they betrayed us and our values. And the Muslims will say, what? They're not your guys, they're our guys. La wallahi, we will never abandon our brethren for you. This hadith is like Muslim. It's really profound. And inshallah, it indicates that there will be massive conversion. So much so that the Bilad al-Rum remnants are angry. But how come you have those people? They're angry, they're irritated. And this also shows that these hadith are not anti-Semitic or anti-Western. No, it is good versus evil. And you will find people of all ethnicities on the side of good. And you will find people of all ethnicities on the side of evil as well. We talked about this last week. These hadith are not anti-Semitic. There will be righteous people who see the truth and they will be fighting on the side of truth. And that's why the other group was demand we want them back to us. Another hadith, now we move on to other hadith and then again go back. Another, as for the issue of Constantine, we'll come back to it. A very interesting narration goes back to Ibn Hawala, Abdullah ibn Hawala. He has a number of interesting narrations from Judgment Day. Abdullah ibn Hawala, the Prophet said, O Ibn Hawala, when you see the Khilafah having been descended to Al-Ard al-Muqaddas, which is Jerusalem, when you see the Khilafah having been descended to Ard al-Muqaddas, then know that the Zalazil and the Fitan and the Balaya are coming, meaning the great wars and whatnot are going to happen, and that Qiyamah is closer to mankind than my hand is to you or to your head. So his hand was on, Ibn Hawala's chest or whatnot. So know that Qiyamah is closer to mankind than my hand is to you. Now, this hadith tells us there shall be a khilaf, but not based in Mecca or Medina, not based in Iraq like the Abbasids, not based in Damashq like the Umayyads, but rather based on the Ard al-Muqaddas. إذا نزلت الخلافة بأرض المقدس. Now, in all likelihood, this is some have said maybe it's before the Mahdi. I am highly skeptical. There's too many ahadith that mention civil war and fighting and whatnot. And the Ummah has never been united since the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu and Ali. Do you think it's going to get united again? But we strive for unity. But realistically, it's not going to happen until the Mahdi comes. Also, our Prophet predicted that the Khilafah will come back towards the end of times. ثم تكون خلافة على منهاج النبوة حديث Muslim Imam Ali. Then there shall be a Khilafah upon the prophetic methodology. In all likelihood, no one knows whether this is correct or not, but in all likelihood, it seems to be none other than the Mahdi himself. And the Prophet is telling Ibn Hawala, when the Mahdi comes, judgment is going to come to him. And that's very true. When the Mahdi comes, go to him, be with him, and the judgment is going to be the very next basic meeting, immediate after. And that's, again, very clear. Now, another point here as well, another issue, which is, again, all of these hadith, you just have to try to sift through them, see if we can understand them. So another issue that is explicitly mentioned is the conquest of Constantinople. Constantinople is, of course, Constantinople, named after the Roman Emperor Constantine. They were so humble that they wanted to name cities after themselves. So it was very common to name cities after themselves. And so Constantine basically made a city his capital, and he named it after himself, Constantinople. And Constantinople became the bastion of human civilization for almost a millennium. This was the city and the land. This was really, there was no competition with any other civilization up until the coming of Islam. For a millennium, 1,000 years almost, Constantinople was the cradle of civilization. And amazingly, our Prophet predicted Constantinople will be ours. Again, we are coming so many centuries later, we don't even think about this. One of the most significant episodes in human history, or I should say recorded human history, one of the most significant episodes is 1453 and the conquest of Constantinople. This is something that we just take for granted. Most of our kids have no clue. But in reality, it was the most cataclysmic, the most seismic, disruption that happened in medieval history, because it signified essentially the end of the Roman Empire and the conquest of Islam over the Byzantine and Roman Empire. And the Muslim Ummah eventually conquered, obviously, Constantinople. Of course, the beginnings were with Muawiyah. He wanted to conquer from the time. That's what Abu ibn Asali passed away outside Constantinople. From the time of the Sahaba, they wanted it. Multiple expeditions took place, but it was left to Sultan al-Fatih, the Muhammad II, Muhammad, they call it the Turkish call Muhammad, or Muhammad II, the Sultan al-Fatih, in 1453, who finally conquered Constantinople, and he converted it to Istanbul. So Istanbul is, of course, where Constantinople. Of course, you still go and you see. I mean, really, subhanAllah, there's something built here. I mean, that the Hagia Sophia, the Hagia Sophia. What an amazing testament to human mind. I mean, this is a building that was built before the birth of our Prophet ﷺ, and we see it now and we're in awe. Can you imagine the people of that time? We see it now and it is massive and big and no pillars and no beams and the architecture, and it has been standing for 1,500 something years as it is. I mean, truly, and that's just one aspect of their civilization. In any case, what is the purpose of going on there? Because our Prophet ﷺ predicted the conquest of Constantinople. However, good enough, easy, but there's a problem, and that is some hadith mention that Constantinople will be conquered. Excellent, without any time frame. Excellent. We can take that and say Sulaiman, Sultan al-Fatih did it first. Oh, yeah, Fatih Sultan Muhammad II did it, no problem. But there are other ahadith that mention this conquest will take place towards the end of times, when the Dajjal is around the corner, when the Mahdi is around. And this throws a huge spanner in our understanding. What does that mean? Because Istanbul is Istanbul now. What does that mean? Allahu A'lam. I have no explicit or clear-cut or unambiguous answer. The only thing that could be said is that that land will revert to being controlled by a group that is not sympathetic to Islam, even if they call themselves Muslims. Allah knows. Because again, for a time frame, Ataturk, the government, what Ataturk did, but now it is not like that. Now Istanbul, alhamdulillah, it is a, alhamdulillah, Muslim land and whatnot. So definitely it's not like that now. But maybe things are going to change in that land. May Allah protect all Muslims. But maybe things are going to change, and there will be a reconquest of Istanbul, of Constantinople. Also, the ahadith mentioned that reconquest will take place miraculously, without any blood being shed. That was not Sultan Fatih. Sultan Fatih, which was a bloody war. It lasted many months. There was a siege, there was a military, there was a navy, there was an army, there was a blockade. It was the standard war. Many people died. That's not what the hadith predicted. And again, you cannot enact the hadith. Alhamdulillah, Sultan Fatih conquered it, but that's not what the hadith predicted. We'll mention these hadith. Now, what these hadith? Now, this is the hadith I quote you. It is in its narration, in its chain is a weak narrator, so it is a weak hadith. So we're just mentioning with the disclaimer it is a weak hadith. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As said, "You will fight Constantinople 3 times." Does he mean the city of Constantinople, or does Constantinople indicate the Roman Empire and Europeans? Either can be there. You will fight Constantinople 3 times. The first time is that you will do well, but you will not succeed. The second time, you will enter into a sulh with the Constantinople. So much so that masajid will be built inside Constantinople. Now, this is really bizarre, because masajid did not exist in Constantinople up until 1453. And now there are only masajid in Constantinople. But this doesn't seem to be reference to that. Again, all it is encrypted. So until there's a sulh between the Romans and there are masajid inside Constantinople, then you will return for a 3rd time, and you will conquer it with the takbir. You will say Allahu Akbar, and it will be conquered. And the Prophet ﷺ said that 1/3 of Constantinople will be destroyed, and 1/3 will burn down, and 1/3 will be divided amongst you. Now, this hadith seems to indicate a final conquest of Constantinople, and this is something that, once again, it is mentioned in another hadith, which the majority of scholars have interpreted to mean Constantinople. And I'll mention it now. The hadith I just quoted you, it is weak. It is mentioned in the Kitab al-Fitan of Nu'aym ibn Muhammad, it is weak. The one I'm about to quote you now, it is authentic Sahih Muslim. These 2 hadiths seem to add to some concept. What is it? The hadith is as follows. The Prophet asked the Sahaba, famous hadith Sahih Muslim, have you heard of a city, half of which is in the water and half of it in the land? Or in another narration, have you heard of a city, part of it is in the water and part of it is in the land? The vast majority of our commentators said this is Constantinople, because Constantinople, essentially it divides Asia from Europe. You have the Bosphorus Straits, right? And you have that city that, it's considered that it is basically 1/2 this way, 1/2 that way. So the majority of our ulama, and no way Ibn Kathir, others, they say This is Constantinople, and the Prophet is describing. They said, yes, we have. Listen to this now. The Prophet said, Hadith is Sahih Muslim, the Qiyamah will not happen until 70,000 of the Bani Ishaq will conquer it. Not the Bani Ismail. The Bani Ishaq will conquer it. And when they come to it, they, the Bani Ishaq, will not fight with swords, nor will they fight with arrows. Rather, they will say, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and one of the sides will fall down. Then they will say, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and another side will fall down. Then they will say, La ilaha illallah, 2, 3, 4 times until all 4 sides will be fallen down. And then they will enter the city and begin to distribute his ghanima. And while they are distributing his ghanima, the shaitan will call, or a crier will call, that verily the Dajjal has come out to your family, and they will leave everything and return to their family. And hadith. Now, we've heard the similar hadith before, but now we have an added detail. What is that detail? 70,000 of the Bani Ishaq will conquer Constantinople. So, putting all of this together, it is plausible, very reasonable to say that the armies of the Mahdi will be fighting at multiple places in this world. And some of the fighting will be more severe than others. And one of the very end of those battles will be the battle of the conquest of Constantinople. But in this battle, there will be no war, there will be no blood, there will be no swords. It will be a miracle given to them. The people in that battle will come and find the walled gates, and they will realize they cannot fight the people of the city, but they will know this hadith. And the Prophet is telling them, you're going to use this tactic of mine. He's telling them what to do. And they believe in the hadith, so they will use this tactic. So they will say, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. 4 times, all of them in unison, their takbirat and their tahlilat, they are going to cause the walls to fall down, and they will conquer the city without any bloodshed. And then the news will come, Dajjal has come. So they will flee back to Bilad al-Sham, from Constantinople, only to discover it was a lie. Then when they're in Sham, Dajjal will actually come. And then they will wondering what to do or finding him a few times, and then Isa will come, and then as we have mentioned before, it resumes. Now, who are the Bani Ishaq? Some ulama have said that this is a reference to the Romans, that they were considered to be, the Arabs would call them, because Bani Ishaq is not the standard term for the Yahud. Bani Israel is the standard term. And who is Israel, by the way? Yaqub, not Ishaq. Because Ishaq had multiple, he had 2 sons, right? Isa or Rees and Yaqub, Jacob, right? Esau and Jacob, according to the Old Testament, right? So Allah knows best. Some people say that the Arabs thought that some of the Romans were the descendants of Isa, the second son. So to say Bani Ishaq is essentially a reference to the Romans. This is one interpretation. Another interpretation, it means the converts of the Yahud. And even some scholars said, and I don't agree with this at all, but some scholars said, just telling you what they said, some scholars said, oh, this must be a mistake. The Prophet said Bani Ismail, and one of the narrators messed up, and he made it Bani Ishaq. But that's too, I mean, this word is so rare, it's impossible that somebody would have messed it. Right? So a number of our ulama said, this is so bizarre, Bani Ishaq. It never occurs in any hadith, Bani Ishaq. It's not even Bani Ismail. You know, Bani Ishaq, right? Or sorry, it's not Bani Yaqub or Bani Israel. It's Bani Ishaq. And it appears that Allah knows best. This goes back, because the term 70,000 is mentioned. It goes back to the other hadith, which is very clear that there are going to be 70,000. Now remember, 70,000 in Arabic does not mean exactly census 70,000. It is a broad figure. You know, we say in English, man, I called you a dozen times. You don't mean a dozen, right? Now, if you say, I called you 7 times, you mean 7, right? If you say, I called you a dozen times, or I called you 100 times, everybody knows you don't mean it literally. In Arabic, 7, 70, 700, 70,000. This is the generic. When you say 7, you mean I called you a few, or something. If you say 70, it's around that. So 70,000 basically means around 100,000 or 50,000, all that. not exact 70,000. So the Prophet is saying there will be 70,000 converts, essentially. This looks like we're deriving this from this hadith. Means that 100,000 of them have converted. That's not a minor amount, and they are fighting on the side of the Muslims. And it is at their hands, the hands of the converts, that Constantinople will be conquered. Not at the hands of the born Muslims. It will be those who are pure, those that have chosen to fight with the truth. Allah will bless them. That when they say the takbirat, their takbirat will cause the walls of the city to fall down, and they will then conquer Constantinople or Constantinople. Now, this is the standard interpretation. I am sympathetic to it. A number of scholars say this hadith doesn't apply to Constantinople. Have you heard of a city? Part of it is in the ocean and a part of it is on land. That's what the hadith says. Another group of scholars says this hadith is a reference to Venice. Venice, canals, or not. And we say maybe. Allahu Akbar. What can we say? Maybe. I can't deny it, can I? Because the hadith doesn't mention Constantinople. However, other hadith mention Constantinople. No hadith mentions Venice. So Allah knows best. I am sympathetic to this hadith being Constantinople, but we cannot negate that it might possibly be, other cities as well, and Allah knows. Now, we talked about the Malhama, we talked about the civil war, we talked about the Romans on one side and Muslims on the other, we talked about the conquest of Constantinople. There's one set of hadith also left, and that is during one of these series of wars, or maybe before all of this begins. We don't know. Chronology is not mentioned. We do not know. Towards the end of time, the Muslims and the Romans will form an alliance against a third. Now, this is very atypical from the other ahadith, because all the other ahadith mention what? That the Romans on one side and the Muslims on the other side. Correct? So, in my humble opinion, and Allah knows best, these ahadith apply at the beginning of the Armageddon. Things are going to happen where Muslims and Romans will ally with one another. And then that alliance will be destroyed, only to get worse and worse until the Mahdi and the DAJJAL and Allah knows best. And during this time frame, people will convert from the Roman side to the Muslim side. Okay, what are these ahadith of this alliance and treaty? And also these are authentic hadith. This hadith is in Abu Dawood. Auf ibn Malik al-Ashja'i said, I visited the Prophet ﷺ during the Battle of Tabuk, when he was in the Battle of Tabuk. And his tent was made out of leather. His tent was made out of leather. So I sat in front of the tent. The Prophet ﷺ gave me permission and said, come in, Ya Auf. So, and it shows you how eager the Sahaba were. That Auf was sitting outside, and the Prophet saw him from the opening. He saw Auf. He said, "Come in, Auf." Auf said, "Ya Rasulullah, all of me come in, or only a part of me come in?" Means, should I just stick my head in, or do you allow my full body to come in? And subhanAllah, the Sahaba were so particular of the permission. Like, what are you allowing me to come in? This is your private space, Ya Rasulullah. When you say come in, are you saying I fully come in, or do you want me to just put in my head and talk to you? So the Prophet said, no, all of you come in, your whole body come in. So Auf came, and he said to the Prophet, the Prophet said to Auf, "Oh Auf, count 6 things before judgment will happen." He gave a prediction. Count 6 things before judgment day. Number 1, no, my death. Auf said, as soon as I heard that, I was shocked and said, SubhanAllah, we take, obviously, the process of not being amongst us, we take it for granted, we warn them. For the Sahaba, they could not imagine a world without the Prophet. They could not imagine. It's something their mind could not conceive of. And that's why the news came out. What happened was Sahaba, they reacted the way they did, and that's why the Prophet actually passed away. Medina was in gloom, as I said, we had never seen that sadness in their whole life. Right? So they could not imagine a world without. So they never thought, may Allah protect all our loved ones, but we can never imagine living without our loved ones, with our parents. We don't into the world is there with them. Then when they go, that's when the shock comes to us. So the Prophet was saying, count 6 things. Number 1, mauti. I said it was a shock to me. It was, what? Your maut? Before his mind can grasp. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 5. So he has to pay attention. Number 2, he said, and the Muslim saw him shocked. He said, count that as number 1. Emphasizing. The first sign of Judgment Day is the death of the Prophet. That's the first sign. His death is the beginning of Ashrat al-Sa'ah. Number 2, he said, the conquest of Maqdis. Has that happened? Yes, in Abu Bakr's time. SubhanAllah, Abu Bakr's last day of Khilafah was the conquest of Bayt al-Maqdis. And the first day of Umar, he received the Khilafah and the news of the conquest on the same day. Bayt al-Maqdis. And when he said this, which was impossible to even think of Bayt al-Maqdis being a Muslim. Wallahi, it is one of the biggest miracles of the truth of Islam that our Prophet predicted these things, and they took place within a year after his death. A year after his death, Bayt al-Maqdis is gone. And if you really understand history at that time, this was impossible to conceive of. That this small group of Muslims in Medina who have not yet even conquered Mecca, and they're going to go conquer Bilad al-Sham and Bilad al-Rum and Bilad al-Faris. It's inconceivable. And yet within a year, that took place. One of the most unexpected historical turns for Western historians is the rise of Islam. It is inexplicable. They cannot explain it. How could a group from their perspective of ragtag Bedouins come and disrupt human civilization, destroy the Sassanid Empire, carve out the Byzantine Empire, create a civilization that was even more glorious than the both of those previous ones combined? They don't understand how that happened. So for us, our process of said, number 2, which will be the conquest of Jerusalem. Number 3, a plague that will come amongst you and destroy your children and your wealth and property, and it will purify your good deeds. Our scholars say this is the plague of Amwas in the 18th year of the Hijrah. There was a massive plague in the time of Umar al-Khattab. It was the worst plague of early Islam, and they say this is that prediction. Number 4, wealth will be distributed amongst you so much that if a person is given 100 dinars, he would not be happy. The Sahaba were very poor. 1 dinar was a big deal. 100 dinars was a fortune to them. And we're now at a time when 100 dinars is there. Okay, no big deal. We're at this time now. Number 5, there will be a fitna, a trial that will not leave any of your houses except that it will touch it. Our scholars think, in all likelihood, this is the fitna of the Sahaba, that every single household was affected. Siffin, Jamal, Aisha, Talha, Zubayr, Muawiyah, Yazid, that fitna, that first war, the civil war that took place, they say this. Others say this might yet be another fitna that will happen. And then number 6, and this is what we're interested in. Number 6, there will be a treaty between you and the Romans. There will be a treaty between you and the Romans. And then they will betray you and march against you with 80 banners, under each of which will be 12,000 troops. In other words, 100,000 people. This hadith is Ibn Majah. Another hadith mentions that you will form a treaty with the Romans, and you will fight an enemy common to both of you. You will form a treaty with the Romans, and you will fight an enemy common to the both of you. Then you will be victorious, and as you are returning back, one of the Romans will raise the cross on a mount and say, "This has caused us victory." And the Muslim will get angry and destroy that cross that Allah has caused us victory. And war will break out, and the Romans will break their truce. And then this incident of marching against you will take place. So these are only 2 or 3 hadith. That's it. But they predict another genre of predictions, and that is there will be a third enemy. Who is that third enemy? Allah. But it's neither the Muslim peoples nor the Europeans. There's another power on the rise. May Allah protect us from all of them as well. But anyway, this Allah knows whether that power will be the absolute. So there will be a third race, third group of people. You and the Romans will join hands in fighting them. And there will be an alliance between you, and you will be victorious. Once that enemy has been gotten rid of, then the Romans will essentially break their treaty with you. because of this minor skirmish where the Muslims said, no, it's not the cross, and he destroys the cross. And it's between two people that the Romans will take as an excuse to destroy the treaty. And they will then attack you. They will march against you with 80 banners. Now, many of our modern scholars say this must be a reference to the modern United Nations, whatever. I say Allah, but 80 flags. 80 flags on one side. Every flag has a major 10, 12,000 people. That's a major war. So this is another prediction of a great Armageddon that will take place, and Allah knows best. Now, again, is this the Armageddon, or is it one of them? Again, it's not cryptic. Allah knows best. It can also be said, and this is a valid interpretation, I'm not denying it at all. It can also be said that the final battle between Dajjal and Isa will be an easy battle, not a difficult one. And that the Muslims will not die en masse in that battle. And that will be a gift to Allah to the believers. The hadith are not explicit. I'm simply saying it can be derived. How can you derive this? Because when the Dajjal sees Isa, what's going to happen? He will scream, a loud scream, and flee away and dissolve, and Isa will kill him. With Dajjal being killed, his father will see Dajjal being killed, they're all scattering helter-skelter. They're all be going, and that's when the creation will say, come. And